Hi, welcome to our podcast. I'm Lisa Berry. I don't introduce myself too often, but I'm pastor with my husband at Praise and Worship Family Outreach Center in Jasper, Tennessee. And I hope that you enjoy this podcast and that we say something that will help make a difference in your life. I know that a lot of times I have to reiterate to myself and make a difference in my life. So, um, this is for those of you who may be watching it the first time. We call it covenant cuisine. Sometimes I refer to it as faith and flavor or flavor and grace. I don't really know where we're going to land at this point. However, um, we do some cooking and stuff and just have some fun, and I hope that you have fun with us. Talk about the word while we're making probably a whole bunch of mistakes in the kitchen. I really do cook at home, and it's a lot different when you're cooking for a podcast versus cooking at home. But I learn a lot of the recipes with you guys, and most of the time I don't even practice the recipe. So you get it, like if I watch it on a social media platform, I'm like, oh, that looks good or that sounds good. And sometimes I find that it looks and sounds a whole lot better on theirs than it does on mine. So, but I do like learning with you guys. I like it to be kind of fresh. So most of the ones that I do, I've never even made. So today, though, I am going to make one, and I actually did practice this because I really wasn't sure how it was going to do, if it was going to get good crust on it and stuff. So I'm going to be making like this, like totally cheese. So if you're on a carnivore diet kind of thing, then it would be great for that. Or if you're on like a low carb diet, it's great for that. If you're on a dairy free diet, it's not necessarily good for that unless you make it with dairy free cheese. Anyhow, today I want to talk to you about a subject called love. And I know that that's a very broad subject a lot of the time. Some of us love who we love, and we really don't like some of the people that we have to love. Like, some people may have family members they love but don't like. Some people have people in their life that God might have put there as kind of a buffering spirit, so to speak. And so I just want to talk to you about some different aspects of love. And then we'll get to cooking a little bit here. But we know that Jesus is the embodiment of love. We know that John 3:16 says that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And there in 1 John 4:8, it says, he that loveth not knoweth not God. God is love. And so if we begin to look at the scriptures and take them at the very face value that I believe these scriptures are written in, if we go to John 3:16, how I just quoted, for God so loved the world, and then we go to John 3:17, where it says that God came not into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. And so if he talks to us in one verse and then just about love and how he sent his Son into the world, his only begotten Son, that none of us should perish, but that we could have eternal life. And then in the very next breath, it says the writer of the book of John, which I assume is John, according to what I know, John 3:16 says, for God sent not, or 17, like we just said, he sent not a Son into the world to condemn the world. And my husband likes to repeat one from another minister that we've been under for several years. And it says, and if God didn't send his Son, he probably didn't send you either. And so I know that a lot of times we're all in situations where it's hard to dig deep for the love factor. And I've been there myself. And I can't always say that I've passed the test. I can tell y'all stories, which I'm not going to, but I could, that, and not that I'm embarrassed to tell the story, and I want to take the time to tell the story, and I may tell some stories, but in this case, I fall short a lot of the time. When somebody says something to me, there's one thing I try to teach when I taught youth is there's a difference between responding and reacting. If you react, most of the time it's going to come back to where you need to apologize or you should apologize. And then if you respond, most of the time it's because you've sat back for at least a second or two and thought about the response. And if you can turn around and respond in love, it does really change things. And I know that there's been times I've worked in the public, I still work in the public, to where they come off a little bit harsh. And I remember one time I had a client come in and she just was just really harsh. And I could have jumped up and been like, I just don't even want you in my chair. You just need to go. And I had every right in my own business and in the position that I was in and the way that she was talking to me to tell her, look, I'm not comfortable doing the service for you. I need you to, we're just going to stop the service. I'm at a stopping point and you can go. And so I didn't do that. I really just sat there and I was, yes, ma'am. And I was very polite. And she kept her little digs and stuff. And then finally I said, I'm not going to respond to her mean, but I am going to hand to her, in this case, she was very abrupt. And so I just finally said, look, I know what I'm doing. I'm licensed to do this. When I'm finished with this, if you don't like the way it's done, you have every right to tell me that. But in the meantime, let me do my job. I wasn't rude, I wasn't mean, but I was firm. And she said, okay. And a few times she would still get her little things in there. But she left. But before she left, she says, can I book an appointment with you? This is a manicure. She said, can I book an appointment with you for next week? And I thought, oh, in my head, I was thinking, oh my God, please, no, I can't do this, quite honestly. And then I thought, well, sure, because evidently she couldn't have hated me that bad, right? And so she actually became a very good client. And she came to me and her whole demeanor changed. And the next time she came in, she actually said to me, I know I was harsh on you when I was here last week. I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, but you were firm with me back. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she literally got a smile on her face. She said, I'm glad about that. And I was like, yes, ma'am. But I did it in love. I didn't do it mean. I didn't like, well, you just take it this way. And I didn't do that. But I did draw a boundary. There's nothing wrong with a boundary. Nothing. As long as the boundary that you set for you and for them and for in love. But anyhow, she came to me for several years and then she quit coming. And I hadn't heard from her in a while. And I was cleaning my shop one day, getting ready to leave on a Saturday afternoon. And I heard a knock at the door, and it was this client. And I opened the door, and she just smiled so big, and she gave me a really big hug. And I literally felt that hug, and I hugged her because I had developed this extreme love for her. And if I would have let the first impression of her keep me, I would have robbed myself of that and of this particular experience I'm about to tell you. When she knocked on my door and I opened it and she just got this big smile and she gave me a hug and it was like, so good to see you. I'm like, it's so good to see you too. And she said, Lisa, when I first came here, I was really harsh with you. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, but you didn't let me be harsh with you. I said, no, ma'am. She said, but I want you to know something. I said, okay. She said, I really love you. And I said, I love you too. She said, I don't want anything else from you today. I don't need an appointment. I really just came over this way so that I could stop and tell you that I love you. Now listen, she drove approximately 25 minutes to get to me, not to have her hands done, her manicures and nails done, but just to say I love you. And that blessed my heart because I could have really have robbed myself of that, and I could still be emotional about it because it wasn't even approximately 2 weeks later that this particular client I found had passed away. I don't know, maybe she had a premonition, whatever, that she was not going to make it and she just wanted to make it. I don't know what it was. But to this day, I could still, and I'm fighting back tears now because I still could feel that emotion and that love and how it touched my heart. And I would have robbed her and myself of that time, of that moment, and that special moment. So love is a many a splendor thing, right? But if we don't love, the Bible literally says, "He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love." And if we don't love, even in the Bible, it talks about we have to forgive so God can forgive us. Do we forgive because it's just a thing, or is it an act of love? I personally believe that being forgiving is an act of forgiveness, obviously. But sometimes we have to tap into a love factor to be able to forgive, or maybe to see that person in their trauma or where they're coming from. And that's a bold statement because I know that I've been hurt by a lot of people's their own trauma. And a lot of times when you enter the room, trauma speaks first. Almost always, trauma speaks first for what that person has been through or is going through or has suffered in their life, and they come in and they have an abrasiveness about them, or they have defensiveness about them. A lot of times it's because of what they've been through, and so we don't know their story. We know ours, but we don't know theirs, and they don't know ours. You know, one time, one more story before I start cooking. Um, One time I was driving down the road, and I'm not a big, even though I talk about love and all this stuff, and I don't mind somebody kind of giving me a little side hug or whatever. I'm not a real touchy feely kind of girl. I really never have been. If you've heard some of my other podcasts, you'll know why. But so to hug a stranger, I mean, if somebody's crying, my heart goes out to them. I could be like, oh, kind of hug them a little bit, side hug. It's going to be okay. Try to give them affirmation words and stuff like that. But I was driving down the road and I saw something. I saw a girl standing on the side of the road and she was trying to walk out into the road. And while I'm telling you the story, I'm going to start putting on the little omelet. But I'm making a cheese omelet. I'm actually making it in the shape of a heart, well, because we're talking about love. So I thought it would be cute. And I'm going to make it with just cheese. I'm not advertising any kind of cheese. Get whatever kind of cheese you want. In this case, I'm doing Colby and Monterey Jack. And all I'm going to do is just set this cheese right into this little heart. And this cheese has a little bit of oil in it, so it'll have, I don't have to grease this or anything. It's a non-stick, first of all. But it also, and I want to pack it full because I want it to be good and meaty. And then I'm going to stick bacon because everybody knows how Miss Lisa loves her some bacon. Then I'm going to stick some little bacon bits that I buy at Sam's Club. And I want this to be a good little packed up cheese because I want it to be solid when I take it out and in the shape of a heart. So I'm just taking this cheese. I get it from Sam's Club, like I said, and I'm just going to put that on top a little bit. Put it in there just to have, bacon, and I'm going to just let it fry in there. Before this gets real hot, I'm going to take all this off the side because I want it to be a pretty little heart. When we say in the South, bless your heart, it's really not always a good thing. So God bless this heart in a good way. And I'm just going to close that and smash it down, and then hopefully I'll remember during talking that I got something cooking back there. Anyhow, I was driving down the road and I see this girl on the side of the road and she's trying to walk out to the road, but I see cars and cars are coming from different directions, and I thought at first that she was going to the mailbox. But then she wasn't stopping at the mailbox, she was coming to the road. And so I looked down and I saw something in the road. I couldn't tell what it was because I was still a little ways off. And I see cars just coming and she's darting out trying to get to the road. And she was in this panic, actually. And I didn't really realize that that's what was happening until I realized that's what was happening. Because when I looked down, there was a little puppy. And evidently the puppy had been hit by a vehicle. And so I was so afraid for her because it was so important to her that she gets this puppy. And then I saw her just step back and by this time I was passing her, and I saw her cover her face and her eyes, and she just stood back and almost hit the ground where she was at, the pavement beside the road. It was a very dangerous part of the road because it's a major highway. And so I passed her, and I thought in my heart, I said, I can't let this girl feel this emotion without somebody. And so very unlike me, really, to just, I'll keep going. I pulled over, and I see her try to run out to get this little animal, and I see this 18-wheeler, and I thought to myself, I'm never going to get to her by reversing it to get to this 18-wheeler. God, please do not let this, because she was just in panic, and she was running out, and she was trying to get this dog. And I knew that the 18-wheeler couldn't just stop on a dime. And so one of the things that I noticed is that she was just so not uh, in her thinking. And so I got over on the side of the road and I reversed it. And literally, it was like 2 seconds by the time she was able to get this animal and get over to the side of the road and it not get hit by the truck. And so I parked and I just pulled over to her and I walked up to her and I said, "I'm so sorry." And she just looked at me and she just burst out in tears. And she didn't motion to hug me or anything, but I said, "Do you want a hug?" And she just fell in my arms and just started squalling and crying and she just boo-hooed. And in that moment, I was trying to stay as present as I could because it's a very uncomfortable position for me in that moment. And so I just really let go of those inhibitions of mine and I just hugged her and I just let her cry. And I asked her, could I call somebody for her? And she gave me the person to call. And I called from her phone so they would recognize the phone. And I sat with her until the person that she had me call got there and was able to just be there and be present. And you know, a lot of times, I'm going to have to dump this out like this because, well, I don't have my spatula. A lot of times we are so caught up, and so many people that day drove by. They just kept driving by and driving by, and I could have drove by too, but I felt compelled to stop. Now, I haven't talked to her again, and I don't know. I know that you know, the outcome of the dog wasn't good because it wasn't good well before I pulled over on the side of the road. But I don't know if she's thought about that still yet to this day. But I've thought about it many times, how just taking a moment and being present for somebody, even though it was uncomfortable in some ways for me, um, just being present, just being able to say, hey, you're loved, I care. I see you hurting on the side of the road, and somebody wants to take a minute just to give you a shoulder or a hand to, you know, whatever, put a hand on the shoulder. You know, in this case, she just really embraced me and just squalled. And so we don't really know how our being present really helps somebody. And then if we think that, you know, God was done wrong, or Jesus was done wrong by so many people along his journey in life, and especially in death, right? And so people that didn't even know him would scream crucify, like had heard of him maybe, but maybe never even seen him face to face. And when they were given the choice between a thief and Jesus, they literally picked the thief. Um, and when we see that, and when I think of that, how much love it still took for him to give his life for those same people who were screaming, crucify him, crucify him. You know, and even the people, even Pilate really went to the people because he didn't even want to make the decision on taking Jesus' life because he found no fault in him. He literally said, I find no fault in this man. And so he left it up to the people. And so with all of that, Jesus still forgave and still paid the price of forgiveness for those people who wished him dead in ill will and really didn't really even know him. And so, you know, you may be in a store, somebody's having a bad day. We don't know what their bad day is. Um, uh, you know, I know there's a lot of times that I'm just like, I don't feel like adulting today. Um, and I may be short and snappy too. I'm not above doing something, you know, that's undesirable of a Christian person sometimes. I'm as human as anybody else. But I do try to take my daily day and try to remind myself whose child I am, first of all. And when things happen that I could, and a lot of things have happened this last year, that I could really be upset and hurt and want vengeance, I guess, but it's not my demeanor. I see that there are people who are hurting and struggling. I try to see. There are people who are hurting and struggling. And if I see that for them and just allow them grace, then I expect that God would give me grace too. And I know He will. And because He gave me grace, I want to carry that on because I want to be more like him every day than I am to be more like me because I am not always the sweetest person. I know that's hard to believe, I know, but I'm not always the sweetest person in the whole wide world. But anyhow, so here is my little cheese bacon waffle shaped in a heart to remind you to let's always carry our day in love. I hope you have a great day and have a great day on purpose.